Hello and welcome back to the Frugal Granny channel. My name's Ali and I'm Frugal Granny. I'm a 64 and 3/4-year-old semi-retiree. I left my office job at the beginning of June and I'm now working 21 and 3/4 hours a week in a supermarket to help fund the 2 years between now and when I get my state pension at the end of July 2027. I've started this channel to record the challenges I face and overcome during that time, and you know what it's like to retire early and suddenly and have all these things to deal with. Anyway, today is Coffee and Catch Up 16. We usually do a bit of a financial roundup on Thursdays, and although I thought not much had happened this week, there's actually quite a lot to report back. So before we start, thank you very much to those of you who are returning viewers and to all of those who have subscribed in the last week or so. It's made a real difference to me. It's got my channel out of what I felt was a stagnant phase, and I'm really very grateful. I think we're back on track again now, so that's fantastic. And if you're a new viewer, you're also very welcome, and I hope that you'll find the content interesting. If you want to know a little bit more about me, you can go back and look at my first video, which was called Hello, I'm Frugal Granny UK. I'll put an information card up in the top right hand corner. Right, so this week's financial excitement. What has happened? The first thing I think that's really happened is that at last I've got my car back from the mechanic at the garage. They said they were only going to keep it 48 hours. They ended up keeping it 4 days. It needed a new power steering cable. They had to take the old one out, send it to a shop over the other side of town, have one specially made because the part for my car is now obsolete. I managed to get my car back last Friday just before closing, so I had my car for the bank holiday weekend, and the bill came to £191 and a few pennies. They had estimated to me that it would be about 200, so it was great that it came in a little bit less. That means I now know that my MOT plus that repair have cost me £691 and a few pennies. Let's call it 692, and I can now take that money out of my car maintenance sinking fund and pay that off my credit card. I'm not actually going to take the car repair off yet, and I will explain why I'm not going to do that. As I mentioned last week, I've got quite a few things sitting on my credit card at the moment. I've got the bill for my new spectacles. These are my old ones because the new ones are still not really working for screen work. I've got the 2 bills for firewood, one from the supplier, one from Home Bargains, and now the 2 bills for my MOT and car repairs. There's also a bill for the driving lessons. Oh my goodness me, I'm sure there was another one, but that's quite enough. But what I'm trying to do is leave that money in the high interest saving accounts as long as I can, so that it accrues as much interest as it can before I have to take it out and pay off my credit card. The other thing I've had to bear in mind is that I'm only allowed to make 4 withdrawals from each of those accounts in a year before I lose the high interest rate. So I don't want to take out money for the MOT and one repair and then take out money for another repair. So I've been waiting for the second bill so I can take out both bills as one lump sum. The other thing I have to bear in mind is that my credit card statement is made up on the 9th of every month. So anything that was charged to that card before the 9th of the month is due for payment before about the 4th of the following month. Anything that goes on to that card after the 9th of I can't say that. Anything that goes onto that card after the 9th of the month doesn't have to be paid off until the 4th of the following month. So what I've done this week is I've gone onto my online credit card statement, and anything that was charged to the credit card before the 9th of August, I have paid off. Anything that was charged after the 9th of August can sit there probably for another month, and then I will pay it off before the 4th of October, and I won't get any interest. I'm sorry if that all sounds a little bit complicated. So what have I paid off? I've taken the money for the firewood out of the firewood sinking fund as one lump sum, but I've paid it onto the credit card as the bill for the supplier and the bill from Home Bargains. I've also paid off the £912 for the driving lessons. Hopefully you're never going to hear me mention driving lessons again now. I might mention driving test, but not driving lessons. So those two things are paid off. They're off my credit card. They're out of my sinking funds. The things that are left in my sinking funds are, and let me just get this right, my glasses and the car service and MOT and repair and the second car repair. So those bills can sit there now for about another month. So I can get another month's interest off them before I have to part with it. So that's great. And the other thing is if I've got something sitting on my credit card at the beginning of the sort of statement period, it means that the direct debit from my main account, which takes the £10 minimum payment, will be activated, and I won't lose the interest on my main current account as I have done for the last 2 months, because I've been too keen to pay off my credit cards. So I do have to be very careful with sort of juggling when I pay things off my credit card. So A, I don't pay interest on the credit card, and B, I don't lose interest on my main current account with my bank. That's probably all as clear as mud, but that's as good as it gets right now. But at least some of those big bills are now, crossed off the list, paid for, and those sinking funds are now at the level they are so that I can start building them up again. So I'm just waiting to pay my glasses and the bills to do with the car. Right, the other thing that's happened this week is that my Annuity 1, as I call it, which is my annuity from the job I had with a further education college years ago, that's been paid for this month. That comes through on the 21st, and I've popped that straight into my buffer fund so that it's sat there ready to form part of the monthly allowance I pay myself on the 1st of each month. Those of you who are new may not understand what I mean by a buffer fund, but basically I have a separate current account, and anything that comes in during the month, annuities, salaries, anything, goes into there, and then at the 1st of the next month I pay myself £1,400 to live off for the coming month. The balance stays in the buffer fund, hopefully building up a buffer within a buffer. If you want to know more about that, I'll put an information card in the top right hand corner about my buffer fund. I'll also link it at the end of the video and put a link in the description. Anyway, so that annuity's come in. That's not exciting anymore. That's coming in pretty regularly now, and that just goes straight into the buffer fund account. There have been a few transfers from Buy Me a Coffee, and thank you very, very much to all you lovely viewers who have supported my creativity through Buy Me a Coffee. There is a link in my homepage description, and I don't really like talking about this sort of thing because I'm not actually on YouTube to ask people for money, but if you do want to support my creativity and this channel, Buy Me a Coffee is actually a much more efficient way of doing it. The creator gets a bigger percentage of the gift that you give. I have actually noticed with Buy Me a Coffee that there is a rather funny thing that happened. Say somebody gives me £5. Buy Me a Coffee then converts that into dollars, and I'm assuming that's US dollars. it then takes its 5%, I think, and then tells me that I'm due so many dollars minus the, obviously minus the 5%. And then if I press withdraw, it withdraws that and converts it back into pounds. So I'm like, it's gone all the way around the houses. And I'm sure that, when it goes from dollars to hang on, I'm getting confused now. When it goes from pounds to dollars, gets the commission taken off, and then goes back from dollars to pounds, I'm sure that a little bit more gets shaved off along the way. But that's just something interesting that I saw this week that really made me giggle. And it does make it quite hard to keep track of those payments. And I think I've still got one that hasn't landed in my bank account yet. It takes almost 2 weeks from pressing the withdraw button for it to actually arrive. It's quite a long and convoluted process. But anyway, thank you very much for those of you that have availed yourself of it. And as I said, the link's in my homepage description. Okay, in the Coffee and Catch-Ups, I've also been giving a weekly update of what I've spent each week in terms of my £45 a week grocery allowance. I will say that I am now spent up for the month. Things did break down slightly in week 3 because I spent the whole of week 3's allowance on stocking up my freezer with chicken and bacon. So I actually used my discretionary spending for my grocery spending in week 3, and then I've spent a little bit of money too in week 4. I have at the moment got, according to my spreadsheet, £8.31 left in my bank account, but I bought a new lump hammer this morning for $8.99, and I've had to put that on my credit card for now because obviously $8.31 won't pay for an $8.99 lump hammer, but I can pay myself on Monday and then sort that out quite quickly. So without going into too much detail, let me just see what I have spent in weeks 3 and 4. I think I mentioned in one of the Monday magazines that I'd bought 12 tins of sardines for the prepper pantry. I bought mushrooms and spring onions for cooking. I bought a Bounty bar and a 6-pack of fizzy water. That will have come out of discretionary spending rather than actually out of the food budget. I bought some eggs, some onions, cheap red wine. That would be discretionary. I bought some cereal boxes because of the furry friend that has visited in the night. Put the cereal in plastic boxes. I took out £10 of cash, and due to the viewer who mentioned that the 4 packs of Italian chopped tomatoes were as cheap as a 4-pack as the individual cans of economy chopped tomatoes, I bought 3 4-packs of Italian chopped tomatoes for my pantry. I bought myself the new novel by Peter May. I think that's called The Black Lock. That came out of discretionary spending. And I bought myself a cardigan for the winter. I got that down to £8.40, saving of £9.60. I had got £6 of vouchers. And I also get 20% off as a staff member. So I've got a lovely new soft maroon cardigan for the autumn, very long line. I think they call it a boyfriend cardigan, but I'm very pleased with that. And then I bought a few things on shift because it got very busy over the bank holiday. I literally worked the bank holiday weekend. I wasn't sat in the garden with a Prosecco, I'm telling you that now. So I bought a Cornish pasty, some more fizzy water, a meal deal, and then, as you'll see in Magazine Monday on Monday, I've stocked up the freezer with cheese for the next few months, and I bought some double cream to demonstrate butter making as per the request of a few of the viewers. So that leaves me with about £8.31. And I did buy a lump hammer and 3 heather plants this morning, but I've popped those on my credit card for now. I know that's a little bit naughty, but I was passing by B&Q and it's actually was easier for me to take in that shop and get those items then and come home than it was to make a special journey on another occasion. So that can just sit there until Monday, and then I will take that out of September week 1, or my discretionary spending for September. So I think I've done pretty well, I think, this month in terms of grocery spending. I've had a few little treats, a book, a couple of bottles of cheap wine, a new cardigan, a Bounty bar. So not bad at all. I managed even, I think, to put £17 in my savings in week 1. So we've done quite well, really, and I will have a bit more of a thorough analysis of that maybe next week. The other thing that I usually report back on is my supermarket salary and how that's going. I've managed to pick up quite a few extra shifts recently, and as a result of that, I've managed to bump up the amount I think that I'm going to be paid in the middle of September, and the money from that payment will go towards into the buffer fund towards the monthly allowance I pay myself in October. I've actually had a look at my schedule now, and as far as I'm concerned, I've got enough overtime now in the current 4-week period, so I'm just going to give myself a little bit of slack now until the next 4-week payment period starts, or the overtime for that starts appearing, and then I will pick up some more. In terms of how the buffer fund's standing at the moment, enough has come in this month for me to pay myself my full monthly allowance on Monday, and I'm really pleased about that. An important part of that is obviously the money that comes in from YouTube, and I did have my YouTube payment for July this week. So let's just have a quick look at that. The YouTube payment I got this week was £517.87. Now I put aside tax at 30% for that. Now I've explained why I do this before, but I'll explain it again. There are 2 different ways of being taxed if you've got a side hustle income, and I think YouTube in my context probably could be considered as that. You can either use the £1,000 trading allowance and take the first £1,000 tax-free and then be taxed at 20% or whatever on any income above that, or you can go down the expenses and taxation route. And I'm not actually sure at the moment which is going to be better for me, but what I'm concerned about from previous experience as a small business holder is that if you are taxed so much in 1 year, the first year of your business, HMRC often asks for 50% of that value up front against the second year. And I think that would probably only hold if you were going down the tax and expenses route. As I'm not sure which route I'm going down yet, I have decided to not just to put aside 20% tax, but also the extra 10% that they might ask me for. Now, if it turns out that I don't need to go down that route and I just use the £1,000 personal trading allowance route, then this extra money that I've put aside is effectively savings for me. It turns into personal savings once I've paid whatever tax is owed. So that's just a quick, not probably terribly clear explanation of why I put aside 30%. And so 30% of 517.87 is 155.36, and that leaves me with 362.51. Now that's a very, very convenient figure because I needed £62 to finish topping up the driving lesson fund before I could pay it off my credit card. So I put £62 into the driving lesson fund, and then I used the money in that driving lesson fund, which was then £912, because I'd already got £850 in there, plus 62, £912. I paid that off my credit card. That left me with £300.51. And those of you who've been with me for a few months now know that I like to try and aim to put £300 from YouTube every month into my buffer fund towards my monthly allowance that I pay myself on the first of every month. So I literally did have £300.51 left to do that. Now, rather than putting the 51p into personal savings, I just moved the whole lot into my buffer fund. So essentially this month, July's YouTube earnings, which get paid a month afterwards in August, they have paid for tax, finished off paying the driving lessons, and topped up my buffer fund. So there really isn't much to write home about in that respect this month. So the buffer fund is now, apart from Annuity 2, which should come in tomorrow or the next day, and Annuity 3, which actually comes in on the first of the month, the buffer fund is now ready for September. And whether those things have come in or not, there is enough money there now for me to pay myself the £1,400 on the 1st of September. And this is really why I set it up, so that I wouldn't be sat here feeling anxious about whether payments were going to arrive in time for me to be able to have the money I needed for the month ahead. Anyway, I just thought it'd be quite interesting at this point to just check in on how much I have earned from YouTube over the 3 months that I've been monetized. I was monetized in 3 weeks, but I didn't actually get anything for the 4th week because I'd messed up the settings on my account. I hadn't realized that YouTube didn't know that I was over 18, and so they weren't giving me any money for that week. And it wasn't until I actually verified my age that they were happy to start giving me ad revenue. So I actually lost a week's worth of earnings, but you know, that's just all part of the learning curve, really. So if you're thinking about going down this route, just make sure you've got your settings on your YouTube channel correct, that you are verified as over 18, because that was the thing that I hadn't done. They thought I was a minor, which makes me laugh, really. It really does make me laugh. It's called Frugal Granny, but they think I'm a minor. I don't know. That is really quite funny. But anyway, let's just have a quick look and see what they have paid me. If you go onto the analytics page of your YouTube studio, you can flip the settings to see what you've been paid as lifetime. And YouTube say that in the lifetime of the period that I have been monetized, they have paid me £1,906.08, which is quite amazing, actually. And it just goes to show that the principle of the accrual of small gains really does pay off. It really does. So in May, which was the first month I was monetized, they paid me £377.42. In June, they paid me £618.53. And then in July, they paid me £517.87. My August income so far is £393.77. So that's taken a little bit of a hit compared to June and July. And if I do the maths on that, hopefully it will come in at about £472. So basically what I've worked out is if my running daily average for any month is about £15.50, then I should have enough money to put money aside for tax and pay myself £300 towards the buffer fund that contributes to my monthly living allowance. So I did get monetized very quickly, but I realise now that what has happened to me is not normal, and that people can work very hard and very long until they do get monetized. And in actual fact, I hadn't anticipated being monetized until at least Christmas this year, and I was willing to play that long game. And I will admit that I'm sure it's the fact that I had an Instagram account with over 1,000 followers, and I made it very clear to them that I was going to start up on YouTube, and I think that was the reason that I got the followers so quickly. A lot of people came over from there to follow me. So in a sense, please don't look at my apparent success and think that that's normal. I don't think it's normal. I've had my Instagram account for literally over a decade, in 2 different formats. I've known some of the people who I speak to there for a very, very long time, and they've become very dear friends. So yeah, I think my situation is not 100% normal, and some people might even consider it as cheating a little bit, because I haven't actually started from ground zero. But then you can start from ground zero and achieve something phenomenal. If you've not already had a look at his account, I'd just like to mention Retired Guy to you. He's managed to get monetized in 1 video. I just think that's absolutely amazing, and I just think it shows the need that there is out there for people to discuss early retirement in our age bracket. Yeah, so it's been an interesting journey on YouTube, and I think I might talk about that in a little bit more depth in another video. It may be also of interest to some people who are thinking about starting a channel, and the pitfalls and challenges that you have to face when you do. But anyway, so there we go. There's quite a lot there this week. There's been an annuity payment, there's been the car bill, I've paid some stuff off my credit card, a few lovely gifts from Buy Me a Coffee. I've spent all my money for this month apart from £8. And YouTube have paid me. The buffer fund's in place for next month. There's still a couple of things outstanding for the end of the month. I've managed to get a bit of overtime. So in actual fact, there's quite a lot has happened. And I was thinking that, now my annuities were in place, that life was going to get a little bit predictable and boring, but I don't think so. There's still an awful lot going on. So anyway, thank you for dropping by and listening to me rambling about money again. I do hope that that's been of some interest. I will say that knowing that you're all going to be holding me to account every week is really, really useful. It helps me keep on top of things. It helps me keep disciplined. It helps me keep my records up to date, and for that I'm eternally grateful. Otherwise things could very easily get into a mess. I mean, it's almost a part-time job in itself, looking after your money. Well, you don't need to be semi-retired for it to be a part-time job looking after your money, but it certainly is pretty full on at the moment, making sure that everything's balanced and that I can make ends meet. But anyway, I'll leave you with another picture of the sleeping kitty. She doesn't seem to do much but sleep, but you're very, very welcome to have a few minutes looking at her in her Sleeping Beauty mode. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on Saturday. I'm not 100% sure quite what I'm going to talk about yet, but I might talk about my YouTube journey. And then on Monday Magazine, I've got some snippets that are still in preparation, but I'm hoping you're going to enjoy them. Anyway, until then, have a lovely rest of the week and a great weekend. Thank you. Bye-bye now.